Hey everybody, um, happy April Fool's Day. It is April 1st. It feels like March went on for the better part of 2 decades there. I don't know, I saw someone post the other day that it was March 97th. You just lose track of time and whatnot. For me today, I wanted to get out, not just for me personally, but to be in a space as I share this devotional with you that you're familiar with. I'm on the porch of the study center on campus. As you can probably hear from the beeping behind me, they're still working on Country Club Road. But most of all, I just wanted to be in a space where we all share love for one another. We share care for one another. Let you guys know how much we desperately miss seeing your faces every day. And just take a few moments to share devotional with you. This will go up onto the YouTube channel if you're not subscribed there yet. Go to UNC Chi Alpha in YouTube and you'll find it. I want to talk to you just for a few moments about isolation and solitude and tell you a little bit about what the difference is and use an example from the Bible in Elijah's life where maybe you can relate to a little bit what he was going through. Not totally, it's not an exact comparison, but somewhat. So 1 Kings 19 verses 12 and 13 says this. Now this is a time where Elijah felt like he was the only one that was following God. He was the only prophet left. King Ahab and Jezebel wanted him dead. But at the same time, it was just following a moment where God did something miraculous on Mount Carmel where he proved himself to be God. And right after this, we find Elijah running and hiding and isolating in the wilderness. And God comes to him and tells him to go to Mount Horeb where he's going to meet with him. And at first there's an earthquake and a wind. Excuse me, the pollen's getting me. And a fire. But God's not in any of those things, the Bible says. And then we pick it up right here in verse 12 of 1 Kings chapter 19, where it says, "And after the fire, the sound of a low whisper. And when Elijah heard it, he wrapped his face in his cloak and went out and stood at the entrance of the cave. And behold, there came a voice to him and said, 'What are you doing here, Elijah?' Now, Elijah thought his situation was unique to him, that nobody else went through what he was going through, that nobody seemed to care and nobody understood, and he was just having a pity party, really. And the emotions are real, and if you're feeling that way, that's understandable, and that's okay. But what we don't want to do, and what Elijah didn't need to do, was just wallow and stay in that place because it just wasn't good for him. If I can put it this way, isolation it's a little bit like a leopard crouching in the tall grass of the plain waiting to pounce on us. And it's not to take our lives so much as it is to instill fear and hopelessness in us. And oftentimes our response to sensing that and becoming aware of isolation not being good, we just whine and complain that no one understands and no one knows what I'm going through, even though we sense the danger that awaits us if we stay in that place. And so often what happens is we sense the danger and we want to voice it, we want to express it in some way, but it tends to come out in a scream of silence and hopelessness as we don't know what quite to do with it. And so isolation tends to echo self-accusations of unworthiness and it's as if we look in a mirror and we think, what's wrong with me? Or why do I feel this way? Am I less than others? But the reality is isolation is just a dead end where all the voices of defeat collect in our lives. It's just not a good place to be. It's a place that the enemy of your soul wants you to remain. Solitude, though, is different. Everyone needs solitude. Whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, if you're an introvert right now, maybe you're like, man, I have trained for this moment my whole life, right? Or if you're an extrovert, you think, what kind of hell or jail have I found myself in, right? I need to be out. I need to be amongst the people. But it's also in the quietness of solitude where all the noise of the day, all the busyness, the escapism, the stress, the anxiety tends to fade away, and we find ourselves in the right place to hear the voice of God, in the quiet place to hear the voice of God. We don't practice solitude often enough, and when we do, we don't do it very well because oftentimes when we try to separate ourselves, take a walk or find a quiet place to be, with the Word and in prayer with God, often what happens is we feel the withdrawals. Yeah, try putting your phone down for a little while and see how long you can do it before you got to feel like the need to pick it back up and check the notifications and whatnot. It's uncomfortable. Yeah, and it usually results for a time in a tug of war between our desire to suppress the stress and anxiety by escaping or binging or whatever we do to cope, with the need to actually express what we're feeling. And so we need relationship for that to happen. We need God in that moment. We need each other in that moment. But it starts in a place of solitude, because that's where we settle into the peace that God has for us. That's where God comes to us. Jeremiah chapter 29 and verse 13 tells us that if we seek Him, if we come near to Him, He's going to come near to us. Probably not in the way that we've crafted in our minds, and probably not in the fulfillment of the solutions and dreams potentially that we might be having and hoping for. But when we get into that space, God speaks to us in a way that we know it's Him, that we understand that it's Him, even in the midst of feeling like no one understands, even in the midst of feeling like no one is going through what I'm going through or feeling what I'm feeling through. But God knows. And He's there with us in those moments of solitude. So you're not alone. He knows exactly where you are. He knows exactly what you've been through. He knows exactly what you're going to go through as well. And so we catch back up to Elijah there in these verses, and we see that God does something pretty significant here. He gives out 3 things to Elijah, essentially. He tells Elijah to go, right? Not to remain in this place, because he knows that isolation is going to bring unhealthiness and death to Elijah if he remains. Elijah's already despairing for his own life and wishing it was over because of the difficulties that he's facing. And so God says go, and I think He says that to each of us today. Don't remain in this place of isolation. Don't remain in this place of victimhood. It's not good for you. And secondly, He gives Elijah direction to go. He actually sends him somewhere. He gives Elijah a mission. Even in the midst of stay-at-home orders and shutdowns and all that's happening right now, there are people that only you can touch. There are divine appointments that God is aligning for you, people that you're connected to or will be connected to, whether digitally or otherwise, that God has ordained for you to serve, for you to love, and for you to share your faith with. And so look for the mission that God has for you. In Elijah's case, God sends him to anoint kings. Maybe it's not to anoint kings, but He's got something for you to do. And lastly, seek out someone to help carry the burden that you're carrying. In Elijah's case, He sends him to find Elisha, and Elisha will take over the mantle at some point from Elijah of being the prophet of God and carrying that mission forward. But in your case and in my case, maybe it is we just need somebody to help. We just need somebody to walk with us, to carry this burden of the unknown, of fear, and definitely to not let us be isolated, but to be with someone. And even right now, if you don't have a physical person to walk that out with you, I think God's going to give you somebody, either digitally or otherwise. But even if you don't have that person, God is with you. And so are we. We want to express to you guys how much we love you. We're praying for each of you. We care for you deeply. And pray that God's peace be on each one of you. Love you guys. Can't wait to see you soon. Come back to campus. We need you here. Love you. Bye-bye.